President Trump declared an indefinite extension of ceasefire. We have seen how he was chickening out on the Iran war right from the beginning. One day he gives ultimatum, the next day he retreats. So this has become quite common and obvious for the world. In fact, he has declared 48-hour ultimatum, and that was immediately followed by 5-day ceasefire. Again 48-hour ultimatum, again followed by this time 10-day ceasefire. Now he has extended the ceasefire indefinitely. So he says the reason which he gives is quite bizarre. So the reason Trump gives is that Iranian leadership is fractured, so they are unable to arrive at a conclusion on what kind of deal they should arrive with US. So therefore, I am extending the ceasefire indefinitely so that Iranian leadership comes with a unified stand. We really don't know who said that Iranian leadership is divided, but Trump finds a reason. He has to find a reason to extend the ceasefire. So the reason which he has cited earlier was to facilitate the dialogue. Then the dialogue really took place. Vice President J.D. Vance was in Islamabad for talks, and those talks did not result in any deal, despite Vance claiming substantial talks with Iran. Then came the assertion that Vice President J.D. Vance is again leading a team to Islamabad for a second round of talks. At one point in time, Trump even said, I may also go. But suddenly he has extended the ceasefire indefinitely, that too citing a reason that Iranian leadership is fractured and they have to arrive at a unified opinion. So to facilitate diplomacy, so I will extend this ceasefire till Iran comes out with a unified proposal. Nobody knows what is the timeline for that. So, and he has given this credit to Pakistan. So he is notorious for giving credit to Pakistan because he knows very well that if he gives credit to Pakistan, that will not damage his reputation. Because Pakistan is Trump's agent. So Pakistan doesn't have any individual standing. So last time also when ceasefire was declared, he credited Pakistan. He publicly thanked Rasim Munir and Sabaz Sharif for that. But surprisingly, later it came out that China was behind convincing Iran for a ceasefire. So when a reporter asked about this, yes, Trump was compelled to confess it. Yes, China was behind the ceasefire. But he did not want to give the credit to China precisely because China is his rival. Pakistan is his agent, is a paid agent. So therefore, Trump chose to give the credit to Pakistan, which doesn't hurt his reputation. But if you look at the developments, you clearly understand that Trump wants to extend the ceasefire forever, and he wanted Pakistan to ask for it so that he can act on it. So it's all pre-managed show. So Pakistan requested President Trump to continue the ceasefire forever for an indefinite period. So Trump immediately agreed and thanked the Pakistani leadership for that. So these developments clearly indicate that the Trump was so desperate to stop the war, but he was only trying to find a reason to claim that he won the war. So he was desperately looking for an alibi to end the war. He was trying for an honorable exit from the war. But surprisingly, Iran was choking him. Iran never gave an opportunity for Trump to claim victory. On the contrary, Iran says Trump has lost, so he is talking all this only because he lost the war. So, but the fact remains is, why did Trump declare indefinite ceasefire? Because Iran refused to come to talks, second round of talks. What is the reason for Iran's strong, stubborn decision not to attain second round of talks? Well, after the first round of talks, the contention was, the remaining contention was on the Israel-Lebanon ceasefire. Well, to be precise, Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire. Finally, after a few days after the first round of talks, Trump announced Israel-Lebanon ceasefire. Lebanon is different from Hezbollah. Hezbollah is part of the Lebanon, but it is a paramilitary force autonomously functioning from the Lebanese government. Hezbollah is part of Lebanese government, but it is a Shia militia group. So Lebanese, it is not Lebanese army as such. But still Hezbollah said it will honor the agreement between Israel and Lebanon. Well, after this development, Iran declared, well, one of our very important conditions. If you look at Iran's 5-point plan, first and later 10-point plan, ceasefire with Hezbollah was one of the important conditions. Iran said not just attacks on Iran should stop, but attacks on its proxies should also stop. So, when the moment Israel-Lebanon ceasefire could be arrived at, Iran declared it is removing the blockade on Strait of Hormuz, which is a major development because after the commencement of war on February 28, the biggest geoeconomic shock Iran could give was the blocking of Strait of Hormuz. Trump, despite his tantrums, he could not do anything. NATO allies refused to come along with him. He could not send his warships. Instead, Trump declared a naval blockade of Iran to counter the Hormuz blockade. So obviously, when Iran removed the Hormuz blockade, he has to remove the Iran naval blockade also. But he refuses to remove it. So this infuriated Iran. Iran said, when we are removing Hormuz blockade, how can the US continue with its naval blockade? Iran called it a violation of ceasefire norms and then said any blockade of cargo ships, commercial ships of Iran, tantamounts to a military attack. So it equated the confiscation of an Iranian cargo ship as armed aggression and then refused to participate in the talks in Islamabad. So who has created this crisis? It is Trump who created the crisis by unnecessarily continuing naval blockade when Iran has already agreed to remove the blockade of Strait of Hormuz. And then he continued to threaten again that Iran's power plants will be attacked, Iran's bridges will be attacked. So the kind of shifts which Trump was making. So the nature of Trump's comments obviously led to a lack of trust between US and Iran. So Iran has an experience of witnessing a war, armed aggression on it, first in June 2025, later in on February 28, 2026, when Iran and US were already holding negotiations. Right amidst negotiations, Israel and America started this military aggression in Iran. So therefore, Iran always had this mistrust. But now Trump's back and forth maneuvering has led to Iran believing that US is not serious for talks. Iran has already declared that even this ceasefire they don't recognize. Even this ceasefire is only a strategy for buying time. So Iran anticipates a much bigger surprise attack from US and using this ceasefire as a period to re-equip. So therefore, when you have such a large distrust between two warring nations, any agreement that is durable, comprehensive, is just not possible. So what should Trump do? Trump should remove the factor that is contributing to the distrust. Instead, he is still contributing to the growing lack of trust between US and Iran. So then comes the question, what will happen? What is the future of West Asian conflict? Well, nobody knows what exactly will happen, but one military expert say that this may lead to a frozen war. So in military parlance, there is a concept called frozen war. What does the frozen war mean? There will not be any large-scale military attacks, but still hostilities ceases to exist. So hostility ceases to exist. So there is no big war taking place, but there is no comprehensive, durable peace. The world has witnessed several such frozen wars. Korean War, this was called off in 1950s, but still North Korea and South Korea are always at a cold war, or rather a frozen war. So North Korea is developing nuclear weapons due to fear of US aggression, because South Korea is a US close ally. So the North and South Korea, the tension between these two nations still linger. We have seen India-Pak war right from 1948. So, but still nothing has taken place. Even today, we have frequent military attacks from both sides. Then we have the Taliban example. Taliban was defeated by US forces after the 9/11, but still continued this frozen war for 20 years till it came back to power. So there are many wars. Russian-Ukraine war at East Ukraine started with the annexation of Crimea in 2014. Till 22, it was a frozen war. From 2022 onwards, the Russian war on Ukraine continues. But we are not witnessing the similar kind of military bombarding which we used to see in the past. So therefore, the frozen war essentially means the war will continue at a low intensity and with some gaps now and then. So you will find like an episodal war. So this is what is happening. Why such things happen? Such a frozen war situation comes out only when there is no possibility of a comprehensive and settlement. So there seems to be no agreement on fundamental issues between United States and Iran. US wants handing over of Iranian uranium to it, so Iran says no. US wants no further enrichment. Iran agrees for that, but with a durable with a guarantee that America and Israel will not attack Iran again. US and Iran want no support to proxies like Hezbollah. Iran says no attack on proxies like Hezbollah. So the positions taken by US and Iran are at complete variance thanks to Trump's maximalist pressure and excessive demands. So US and Iran therefore cannot conclude any meaningful comprehensive deal unless the two countries reduce their rigid positions. But surprisingly, that's not happening. Not surprisingly, that's not happening. So therefore, what is the solution? Trump cannot go back to war because it is politically disastrous for him and economically devastating for the world. So he cannot go back to war. At the same time, he cannot end the war. He cannot declare the war because he needs to sell victory to people of America and also the nations of the world. So as long as he cannot sell a victory to both his internal and external audience, he will not end the war. So therefore, he is in a piquant situation. He can't continue the war, he cannot end the war. Iran is indulging in an asymmetric warfare, so it cannot conclude the war because the conclusion comes only when it totally surrenders or it defeats US. Iran defeating US is unthinkable, but Iran's asymmetric capability and Iran's history says it won't surrender. So therefore, the war is heading towards a frozen war.